along with the Preds in losing to the Dallas Stars? Now, would one of those trades include P.K. Subban? I go on NHL.com, and they're already talking about that potential as being one of the top potential deals. Have we seen the last of P.K. Subban in a Predators sweater?
I don't think so. I see that as well. I think that the people that have brought that up are just saying more along the lines of, he's a guy that you could trade right now because he's, there's a lot of teams that would cover a player like that. I don't think they're going to trade him. It's going to come down to the money. I mean, getting another team to take on that contract, $9 million a year, is going to be pretty tricky. You would have to add something to it in order to make it worthwhile, and I just don't think they're going to do that. But I think the more likely defenseman to be traded is Ryan Ellis, who is just about to start his brand new contract, 8 years, $50 million this year. He is a contract you could trade, and a player that, to be honest, I think the Predators need less of a player like him, who is rather small, and he's got some speed, but has played really pretty terrible throughout the playoffs. And they need to upgrade their offense. They need to exchange a defensive player for a more offensive one, and I think that they've got the ability to do that. The other one might be Kyle Turris, who I think is just dead at this point. And the other possibility, I think, is Nick Bonino. In my opinion, one of these three players, Ryan Ellis, Nick Bonino, or Kyle Turris, will be traded this summer. I think one of those players is on, and I think that it's just to create room for other players to come in here to change things up, to get fresh faces in here. I think one of those three players is going to be gone, with my money being most on Ryan Ellis.
Okay, now you mentioned Allen. What about Turris? What could the Predators really expect to get from him? Because I believe he's got, isn't it like 4 years, $24 million that they still have left on his contract? Yeah. And Joe Rexrode wrote about this in the Tennessean. He came in, started well, first handful of games, last 122 games. And if I'm off one or two, forgive me, only 41 points. You need more production than that from a second-line center. Who would want Turris right now, and that's what he's doing?
So I think, I think that's the trickiest part. You don't have to attach someone to it. You have to attach a younger player that the team would be willing to take on as well, or that the team would want, rather. I could see a team like Arizona, to be honest. I mean, Arizona guys are known for taking on bad contracts. It means they can stockpile draft picks and stockpile young talent. And he's drafted by Arizona, so they still want to go back there. But I think they've got some flexibility. I don't think he's a guy that
You know, I hesitate to say this because I didn't think he played particularly well in the fifth game, save for that three saves in succession midway through the first period. But I thought the sixth game really did cement Pekka Rinne as the goalie of the now. I know there was a little bit of talk, should it be Saros, should it be Rinne after that game in the sixth game, but going, 77 minutes, only allowing a single goal, making the 49 saves throughout and such. Yeah, eventually he was beat for the game winner, but, I mean, do you think that Rinne, am I so, out of it that I think Rinne actually strengthened his role as the starting goalie of the Predators, even as he'll be 37 next year?
Yeah, I don't think he did anything. His numbers look pretty bad, but anybody who watched all six games would be able to tell you, the first thing they would tell you is that his defense was terrible. I mean, absolutely terrible in front of him. I mean, he was having to stop so many high-danger chances. Like, as an example, the Predators in the regular season allowed around 25 or 26 scoring chances per game. And that's like average in the league, I think. Well, 24, 25, something like that. They allowed about 35 per game in that series themselves. So about 10 more per game. And about 3 or 4 of those are in the high danger variety. So he's having to not only stop regular shots, but he's having to stop about 4 or 5 extra high danger chances per game. And he did a pretty good job at that. That's why, if I am interested in analysis of this season, I do not think that Peter Laviolette needs to be replaced. And I think David Cole has already said that Laviolette's going nowhere. So I think that's the right decision. I think it's the defense. I think you have to restructure that defense and figure out what is the next level of a defense in the NHL look like, because where I had 2 years ago, a young, small, mobile, skilled defenseman was the way to go. The league has changed instantly over the last 2 years, and need something else. So I just don't think that it's where it needs to be. You saw time and time again, Pennsylvania having to do so much to keep the games close. And I don't know necessarily if he improved his play, but I think he's without a doubt the starter again next year for sure, assuming that the defense can be better in front of him.
Peter Laviolette coming back, you mentioned, the Predators maybe becoming the Pittsburgh Steelers in terms of keeping coaches, because usually in the NHL, a coach is here today, gone tomorrow, but just like Barry Trotz, really you don't feel that he's on the hot seat, Laviolette. So I wanted to, though, mention, you spoke of improving the defense. Another thing that NHL.com points out, signing Roman Josi on the blue line, 41 assists. Okay, maybe that doesn't speak of his defense, but, he's got, I believe, 1 year left on his contract. How important is Josi going forward, getting that deal done?
Well, David Boyle mentioned on Wednesday that they would be working on signing an extension for him as soon as they can on July 1st. They can start negotiating on July 1st. Of course, they can negotiate before that, in other ways. But I think that they're going to sign Roman Josi to a long-term extension. I think it could be in the neighborhood of 7 to 8, maybe even $9 million for Josi. I think that they will make him basically a retire a Predator. I don't think they're going to let him go anywhere. I think they really like him as a player. And that's why, again, I think that's another reason why they probably part with someone like Ryan Ellis, because they need the money to keep the defensemen who play well. I think Roman Josi had a better season than Ryan Ellis, offensively and defensively. He's the captain of the team. I don't think they're in any mood to make a fourth captain over the past 5 seasons, looking up to Shea Weber to Mike Fisher now to Roman Josi. I don't think they want to change that and go with another captain. But yeah, I think that there's no way they don't sign Roman Josi to some sort of an extension beyond this year.
Well, I want to ask how do you think Josie, I mean, just playing the point on the power play, of course, he didn't get any power play goals in the series against the Stars, worst power play in the league. The best player I ever saw, a defenseman, I thought, in terms of keeping the puck in the zone and, making sure with the man advantage that was going to be in play for 2 minutes was Sergei Zubov from back in the day, about a decade or so ago with the Stars. I want to ask you...
It's Zubov and it's Lidstrom. Those are the two that are just the classic power play blue liners.
Oh, the 1 year he played for the Penguins, I think they almost had 40% on a power play. I mean, it was just absurd. But anyhow, he didn't get along with Mary Lemieux, so that was that, But the one thing I wanted to say was that, who do you think, has that ability? Certainly I don't want to compare him to Zubov, but to be that person, does Yossi have that? Does Subban still have that? Who can man that point on the power play going forward for it to improve? Is it on the roster?
Honestly, my thinking, I'm kind of thinking outside the box. And that is that I don't know if you need to have a defenseman out there. I want to say that it was Vegas. It's Vegas. In Game 7, Vegas against San Jose. They went with 6 forwards on the ice with the extra skater when they pulled in order to tie the game late. They put 6 forwards on the ice and scored a goal to tie the game late. Of course, they lost in overtime, but it's pretty rare to see that stuff do that, and rarely see power plays with 5 guys. Why not go with 5 forwards? See what happens. It can't be worse than it was this year. And here's the thing about Roman Josi. When he's out there, he's really not at the blue line playing that sort of top of the blue line quarterback, so to speak. Like Subban does that, but Roman Josi doesn't. Roman Josi sits down towards the circle. He's trying to play passes. He's trying to speed around. He's playing more like a forward. Well, get a forward out there. There's a little bit of guys that's shooting, and see what happens. So, I mean, at this point, you can't really do much worse. So, why not try that? I mean, that's just an option.
Hey, Alex Daugherty of A to Z Sports Nashville, I want to ask you, can I keep you another segment, another 10 minutes and going through the break here? I'd love to ask you your feelings on the playoffs, a couple of other questions about the Predators. Do you have the time to go to 1:43 Eastern, 12:43 Central?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. Let's do that because I'm really enjoying talking to him. We'll find out what's wrong with the Preds. Tri-City Sports Now. It's Tri-City Sports Now, and I'm talking to Alex Daugherty of A to Z Sports Nashville. I want to get along a little bit more what was NHL playoffs. I thought a really wonderful game. Of course, I got the second round today, but a wonderful game between the Canes and the Caps last night, and I really think, and I'll submit this to you here, the good guys won. We were talking a little bit about what's wrong with the Predators. Everybody's saying the power play. He's actually predicting, his gut tells him, the Preds won't deal PK Subban. All right, so there's a name player that I think most fans, from the casual standpoint, they'll like that. Everybody likes to have stars on their team. The other thing is, how about 5 forwards on the power play to improve it? Thinking out of the box from a guy that, Alex Daugherty, I want you to be the general manager of this team after you hand-selected Rocco Grimaldi to come out, and suddenly he gets 3 goals in this series. Although you mentioned, some of the defensive lapses, I can remember in the 5th game, a race to the puck along the boards. Here's Grimaldi supposed to be the addition of speed to the team, and sure enough, he was actually beaten to the puck, and that's kind of how I believe it was the second goal was scored against Rene in that 5th game, the game winner as it turned out to be. So there you go. I guess when you look at this also, and talking about what can be done, is there a player out there, a free agent, a deal you'd like to see to improve the team speed of the Predators? That was said to be a problem for the Penguins when they were swept by the Islanders. What do you think needs to be done with the Preds coming up in 1920?
So I've always talked about it. I think that trading someone like Ryan Ellis or Kyle would be great for improving the team overall. But I think so when you look at the free agents, there's 2 options. I mean, if you really do want to trade one of those big players and clear up some cap room to go after Matthew King or Vinny Panarin or Jeff Skinner, then you do that. And if David Boyle thinks he's got a pretty good chance of landing Matthew King, I think he's going to go after that. He's trying really hard to get him. option with the Islanders, who's going to be a unrestricted free agent. He's going to be, I think, 28 coming up this year. Not a speed guy, but a really good middle of the ice player. He goes in front of the net. He scores about 20 or 30 goals a year. He can definitely improve the top stage. Really, really tough player to play against. I think Jordan Everly, also with the Islanders, I think is another option. So I think the Islanders are going to want to keep him. There's some other players out there that are on the cheaper end. I think $5 million or less that they might go after. But like I said, I think the best option is to really go after one of the top dogs. Go after Jeff Skinner, go after Matthew Shane or Vinny Panarin. I think that's the best option.
Matt Shane certainly has been a name that has come up in Predator circles and all that. So, yeah, free agent option. Of course, you did mention Ryan Ellis possibly dealing and that sort of thing. Hey, I want to ask you a little bit about the Stanley Cup playoffs. I began this talking about what I just thought was a wonderful game between the Canes and the Capitals last night. And to me, and it's not because of geography, but it's rather the style of play, I kind of felt the good guys won. I thought that the image of that Carolina-Washington series was, Alexander Ovechkin punching out, Andrei Sebnechkov, and then it became instead, McGinn blocking the shot late, and then Brock McGinn scoring the game winner in the second overtime. So it changed the perception, and it was like the Goons didn't win. The Palookas didn't happen. Bugs Bunny wins the baseball game. That sort of thing was the style. And as I look through who's left in the Stanley Cup playoffs, a lot of upsets, but what I do see is that 5 of the teams that are still remaining are actually 5 of the 10 least penalized teams in terms of penalty minutes this year in the NHL. You don't like fighting, I don't like fighting, but could this actually be maybe these playoff series with so many division winners going down, including the Lightning, who are called for a lot of penalty minutes this year? Could it actually inspire perhaps a difference of style of play in the NHL going forward, where speed and skill is more emphasized than, slugging somebody, that sort of thing?
Well, I don't really know. I guess on the Capitals, it's interesting because it's all about perspective. Because another way to look at it, the Carolina Hurricanes had probably the most violent play in that whole series, where Warren Vogel broke C.J. Oshie's collarbone, I think, Game 4. And whereas the Ovechkin fight was a one-on-one, those two guys, two willing combatants going at it, and Ovechkin got the better of it. But so it's interesting the perspective there, because I think the Hurricanes are a great story for sure. I think that they've got a lot of young players. I think Peter Mrazek is a great story, and Rod Brindamore is a great coach who has a lot of energy for that team. I think that is a great series. I'm glad to see the Hurricanes win. So I don't know if it's necessarily about who's more of a zoom, like you said. I mean, obviously the Capitals have Tom Wilson, who is the captain of all Soonish hockey players. So there's no argument there. I mean, for sure that guy. I don't know if teams are really thinking about it in terms of, well, I mean, every team wants to commit less penalties. I don't think that they want to do that. So I don't know that the Hurricanes really seem like a necessarily anything less or more goonish than any other team, and I think it was Capitals, except for maybe Tom Wilson. But I don't think he did anything this series to make his name out there. I think he scored a couple goals, but I mean, I think it's good that the Sharks are still through. I think that team is pretty interesting, and I think to watch the Stars Blues series is going to be pretty intense. That's going to be a really great defensive series. So there's a lot of really good hockey left.
Well, the one thing about the Oshie injury is I would say it came kind of in the natural style of play rather than he punched somebody out. And as I remember, the concussion protocol that Sebnechnikov suffered, forgive me as I try to pronounce Russian here, Alex Daugherty of A to Z Sports Nashville, It just seemed to me one legit was a little bit, one injury came in the course of play, the other came in the course of barbarism, is sort of where I looked at that. You mentioned Tom Wilson. What I look at is that the Caps were called for 112 more penalty minutes than the Canes this year. And in the playoff also, I looked at the numbers, and it was 69 penalty minutes for the Caps and 65 for the Canes. When you thought maybe saying a 6-0 game or something like that, that sort of is the recipe for, okay, let's have the cheap shots, that sort of thing coming out around that time. So that's one of the reasons why I made that point. Obviously, you don't necessarily agree with it here, but I would like to see, I do wonder about, the one injury could have been prevented if you didn't have fighting in the NHL. And I just wonder if possibly that old style, Don Cherry philosophy will become Neanderthalish here soon, what with top pick of the Canes on the sideline instead of playing. That sort of, and in an injury that seems to me could have been prevented. I do want to ask you, though, all the division winners going down. What's your take on that?
That's the parody of the NHL.
Sure.
It's such a ridiculous luck-driven sport that and it's not all luck. It's a lot of skill, but it is certainly more luck-driven than the NBA or the NFL or even baseball, where top teams that have been the top all year are. It's a lot more chalk in the NBA and in baseball. You're not going to have a luck team just come out of nowhere, but in the NHL, it's not like that. The best example is the Lightning losing in 4 games to the Blue Jackets. That is, no one would thought the Lightning would lose a series, let alone not win a game in a series. So, I think it is the hardest trophy to win in sports because you have to be the luckiest of any other team, in addition to being better than any other team. You have to be both incredibly good and also very lucky. It's pretty difficult. You can't say that about, I don't think, any other sport.
Yeah, I hear exactly what you're saying. I do remember the days when the Oilers would just go through the playoffs. Generally speaking, year after year, I think they won 5 cups in the 80s through 90. I remember the 4 straight that the Islanders won, the 4 straight that the Canadians won, that sort of thing. Even back to back with the Pittsburgh Penguins, both a couple of years ago and in the 90s. So I do think that there is that element. But yeah, all the President's Trophies, there's only been 8 President's Trophy winners that have gone on to win the Cup. So there you go. It does create a little bit of why did we play the regular season, but then again, as I said this, the Stars only won 4 fewer games than the Predators this year in the regular season. So they were very evenly matched. A system can make all the difference, and I think that's actually what also happened with the Islanders and the Penguins as well here. Who's your pick for the Cup right now?
I really don't know. I think Boston's really got a good chance. I think the Islanders are a tough defensive team. I would go with either Boston or maybe San Jose. I think their goals could be better. I put my money on Boston right now, to be honest. I think they've been pretty consistent. I'd probably go with them.
Okay, Boston, certainly they've got the only 100-point scorer left in the playoffs. I'll give you that. I do say they are also the most penalized team. And for that matter, Brad Marchant, that 100-point scorer was called for 90-odd penalty minutes this year. So if this playoffs, the lesson here is the less penalties you take, that would work against the Bruins and all this. I'm kind of, it seems to me the Sharks might be the dominant team left or so, but you do start to wonder. I'm just wondering here in the Tri-Cities, you can say the Predators are the home team, but if you look at how the roads go or all of this, Columbus and Carolina, if that was the Eastern Conference semifinal, Tri-Cities are really in the middle of those two teams and that sort of L-shaped and all that. So, I don't know,
I gotta run.
He's got to run. We'll do that. Alex Daugherty, it's always great to talk to you. Tri-City Sports Now will come back after this.